Okay, hi everyone. So I just wanted to, I don't know, take the opportunity to kind of just give some give some overall feedback, or that's not really the right way of putting it, but to kind of respond to the discussion in general. So I wrote down, I don't know how my notes ended up being like so messy, but they did, so that I might sound a little discombobulated. But I wanted there's a bunch of stuff I wanted to respond to, and a couple of things I wanted to share with you, and I'm going to try not to take too long. There were there's a lot of comments about like the online classes in particular, which was about teachers doing the bare minimum, just having these automatically graded quizzes and stuff, not really, even when there's Zooms, not really engaging with students. There was something else I was going to add to that list. I can't remember what it was, but oh yeah, very important. The feeling on the part of both teachers and students that you're just trying to tick the boxes and get through the class, and the students are just trying to pass the class and not even really learning. All of this is like so depressing to hear, by the way. But I wanted to address it because I want to make sure that I validate your experiences. I'm not trying to gaslight anybody. I'm sure that like a bad this has been a bad situation for a lot of people. And I think probably some teachers are not doing their part. It's very, but yeah, I mean, and not to make an excuse, but Canvas makes it very easy for you to do that. I'm not satisfied by that. Like I like discussion. I would be so bored if I taught a class that way. So that's kind of why I do this, even though it's very time consuming. I prefer to like make sure I get into the discussions. It just makes me ask a question like, what are if it's so common, then that suggests to me that there's something wrong with the structure and not necessarily the people. I mean, it could just be the people. It could just have a lot of lazy teachers or something. But it suggests to me that there's something structural. What is driving that? What are the structural causes of that? Which if you watch a Hassan Minaj video, especially for adjuncts and grad student workers are in an even worse spot than adjuncts. But it's tough. I think if I can say something in defense of teachers, especially adjuncts, it can be tough to get yourself motivated when your institution doesn't. A lot of you spoke about how especially during the pandemic, you felt that it Temple's true kind of priorities were revealed. Well, that goes for teachers too, and adjuncts. Don't really make very much money. Um, if an adjunct is in it for the paycheck, then they're in a pretty bad spot because it's not a great paycheck. I mean, I live with my parents, for example, partly by choice, but I could not afford to pay rent in Philadelphia, and I work another job. Most adjuncts work at least two or three or four jobs. They adjunct at other universities to get by, and so that just makes it even more difficult. And I guess you know I also don't have like health insurance, for example. And I guess when and I brought up the fact that some of you as students brought up this feeling of being not really a priority for Temple. I understand that feeling, and it can make you struggle to find motivation, but I also don't want to make excuses for teachers that are just automating everything on Canvas. That's not cool either. But anyway, what are the structural causes? If you're all of your professors were actually paid well, and didn't have to teach, for the non-tenure track faculty who are full time, they have to teach four classes usually, which, you know, during the pandemic was 120 students in a semester. So that the more students you have, the more difficult it is to give one-on-one time and one-on-one feedback and all that kind of stuff. And again, not to make excuses, but just to add some more context. And so, yeah, what are there's a structure and a bureaucracy behind that, and it actually kind of made me think about this teacher-student relationship, and how it's mediated by this bureaucracy, which, you know, it didn't used to be like that. You know, students and teachers would find each other, basically. I mean, I'm talking like, you know, ancient times or whatever. You know, if you wanted to be taught by Socrates, you'd go to Socrates, and Socrates would tell you his fee or whatever. But now we have, not to say that the bureaucracy itself is necessarily bad, but it leads to things like, for example, the office, the bureaucratic structure, basically, it decides what students go to what teachers. You sign up for a class, but if the administration decides that it needs to be switched around, then you have no say. I have no say in the matter. What else did you all talk about? Right. So one of the things was about this question of standardization of IH, which I think the department is, or the program is talking about doing. They've been talking about making IH a bit more standard. I have mixed feelings about that. I'm scared what that might mean, because right now I like the fact that I have a lot of flexibility. For example, I don't have to give you a test if I don't want to. And I don't. Standardization, I worry that might involve having to administer a test, which I don't really want to do. I don't want to teach to a test. I want to show you something real quick. The extent to which IH is standardized. I should probably preface this by saying I'm not sure if I'm allowed to be sharing this with you or not. I don't see the harm in it. To the extent that IH is standardized, all IH2 professors have to teach these 3 texts. And then from these 2 lists, you can choose 2. You see, I've highlighted the ones that I think look interesting, or ones that I already kind of know. I usually end up going with Letter from Birmingham Jail, just because of its historical importance, and you know, it's only 5 or 6 pages, so I don't feel like I'm burdening you with like too much reading. But all of these texts, I can pick 2. You're allowed to swap out 1 text for your text of choice. I think this semester I just dropped my choice text because the summer is so short. Okay, but I just wanted you to see, you know, this is I can pick one of these 2 lists to swap a text. So I thought you might find that interesting. I just wanted to share that with you. That is like the extent to which IH is standardized. There are several of you made points about the advantages of you know, standardizing IH a little bit more, and I see your points. I can definitely see your points with that. I've like, so that's why I have kind of mixed feelings about it. Because it could go in the other direction, you know. It could be standardized and be bad, you know. So it kind of depends on what direction it goes in. I guess this point I wanted to make really kind of goes back to this question of, yeah, well, it's linked to the McDonaldization and the, you know, the question of professors doing the bare minimum in an online course. They're linked, right? Because with McDonaldization, if you remember, you know, I had the little robot flipping the hamburgers. with the McDonaldization, that it leads to a situation where, like the teacher becomes less and less important, and everything is automated. So if the teacher becomes less and less important, it's all up to Canvas. You post the thing on Canvas, and the student takes the test. You post a material, the student takes a quiz. Material quiz, material quiz, and then that's how your grade is determined. Well, you don't need a teacher for that, really. Once you have all of the material. And so that's like, I feel like I'm scared that, that's what a fully McDonaldized class would look like. And the modules can even automatically publish themselves on a particular date. So everything could be automated. And it just reminded me, it reminded me of, oh, that's what I forgot to bring up on the Google. I think you could probably Google it yourself though. There were a couple instances this past year where a university, it was not at Temple, but other universities, where they posted the course, and the students were going through the course, not realizing that their professor was dead, and they were using the professor's material, the lectures and the assignments that professor had created and worked on, and they were using that to administer the class, and the professor had passed away, and the students didn't even know. And I guess, I mean, this is kind of going off on a bit of a tangent, but I think it's also related to this other thing that I want to share with you. This is something that I would present in-person class when I had time to go into more depth. This other difference between online classes and in-person classes is that the online classes, it takes forever to have a conversation. What you could do in 50 minutes on a Monday in person, it takes like the whole week in an online course. So anyway, so I used to have a lot of time to go into all of these other like interesting things. The whole McDonaldization thing, it reminds me of what this political scientist James Scott terms high modernism, because it's basically so it just reminds me of the McDonaldization concept, and also I'll give you an example, and I think maybe that will help you see where my brain is going. And it's this scientific forests, and this is something that James Scott writes about in his book, which is about how so the idea was like, they wanted to organize the forests, for timber, in this very high modernist kind of way, which means, modernism is all about like straight lines, making things very easy for a bureaucracy. James Scott uses the term legible. One example might be, the streets in New York City, which once you get above like, I don't know, Canal Street or something, it's all, once the streets are all numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The avenues are all numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that grid system with the numbers, which makes it very easy to like find where you have to go. If you are on 57th and 2nd, and you have to get to 60th and 1st, exactly. All you need to know is where north is, and you know exactly where to go. This is, the legibility of modernism, of high modernism. And then the scientific forests, they were trying to do this. They wanted to get rid of everything except the trees, and plant the trees in nice straight lines. And when they did this, the trees died. Like the trees couldn't live because they got rid of all the wildlife, the birds, the other plants, they didn't it didn't register that you need an ecosystem for the trees to grow, and so they failed. And that's what this book is about, and it's really interesting. So yeah, the McDonaldization conversation kind of made me think of that. And I talk about how standardized tests do the same thing. Canvas is always sort of, it's not in my face like an advertisement, a pop-up advertisement is, but it's kind of like, it's just kind of there, being very tempting. And the one time I did do a quiz, it didn't want to show me, it didn't want to let me grade it manually. But what it wanted me to do was make a quiz that I could make and then never look at again. And I think if you don't know Hannah Arendt, you should maybe Google her. Her books are difficult to read. They're very good, but they're difficult reads. But she was a really important thinker, and this whole idea of banality of evil is important, I think, to go back to the bureaucracy. And I hope I don't know. I hope some of this is stuff that I think about all the time, and I've read a lot about. So sometimes when I talk about it, I might be glossing over things and in a way that makes it not make sense. And then you also have this weird architecture by the Hunter Foster guy that the building in the IH banner is inspired by his work. And I just wanted to show it to you real quick, mostly for the Foucault quote, where there's power, there's resistance. And so all this like normalizing power, and maybe I'll include a link to a video about that. I just feel like all of these things are linked. And Zoom doesn't tell me how long I've been talking. I keep forgetting to set a stopwatch or something. I'm just going to leave that there. Maybe if you have questions about that, or you think it's interesting and you want to like have a Zoom and talk about it, or you want to send me an email and talk about it by email or anything, or you want to respond to this post in the discussion, please feel free, because I find all of these things really interesting, and I'm happy to. I think it's better to have a conversation back and forth than for me to be just talking at you and trying to imagine like the questions or anticipate the questions that you have. So, but it was in my notes, and I wanted to make sure I shared it because I feel like it's really related to the McDonaldization phenomenon. This idea of things being like efficient and streamlined, as being a good thing, and it has its advantages, right? But it also can be dangerous, not just disadvantageous, but actually dangerous. And this is the argument that Hannah Arendt makes in her book about Eichmann, which is that it is exactly that modernized, efficient bureaucracy that enabled the Holocaust. The last point I wanted to make, and the last thing I wanted to share with you is, so after all this discussion, I wanted to kind of, I don't know, let me just say what I have in my notes here, and I'll leave it at that. Teachers have much more in common with students than they do with the administration of a university. And that's because teachers and students, I think, want the same things, okay? Teachers and students want the same things, and that's different than what the administration wants. Teachers and students would love small classes, right? The administration would like huge classes because, for example, for an online class, the cap is supposed to be 25. And in the fall, it was 30. So if you're teaching 2 classes, that's 10 extra students in the semester. And there's no compensation for that. You get paid the same. And I'm not trying to make you feel sorry for me. And I'm not trying to sound like, ooh, we don't get enough money, like that. That's not what I'm trying to do. For me, like, it's fine. And that's not the point. The point is that that Temple would like, if they could, to have, huge classes that one teacher teaches a huge class, because they save money that way. That's how the university bureaucracy functions. Look at, like, also the board of trustees. None of the board of trustees of Temple, I don't think, has any expertise in education. They're all well, the chair of the board of trustees, for example, Mitch Morgan, is a real estate developer. So their interests are really different, I think, from the interests of students and teachers. So I guess that's where I'm going with the teachers have more in common with students. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying. I'm trying to, like, speak openly about my understanding of how the university works, and to also agree with all of you who have made comments about tuition, because well, first of all, Temple brags about being a public university. It's supposed to be funded by the state. And I mean, this part, maybe part of the problem is Pennsylvania also, not allocating enough money to Temple. But Temple is supposed to be a public university, and so it's supposed, you shouldn't have to pay any tuition, theoretically, at a public university. It should be free, because that's the definition of public. Really, the state pays for it. This was like so. For example, like CUNY, the city university in New York, was free for a long time, and then they had to, because the state decreased their contribution to the colleges. I don't remember when it was, but they had to start charging tuition, and it just has kept going up and up. So that part maybe isn't Temple's fault, but what I wanted to share with you, what I wanted to say was, I agree with you that tuition is too high, and I would actually just say that tuition is too high, period, regardless of the pandemic. I mean, regardless of the pandemic and people not being on campus, that just is the icing on the cake, as it were. But really, even without that, even if you were on campus, I still think tuition is too high. And the last thing I wanted to share with you was this website, that you can go to, TempleMadeMillions.com. Now, this is like, full disclosure, I'm a union member, and this is the faculty, and stands for Temple Association of University Professionals. So that includes, like, other, like, librarians and stuff. But you can go to this website if it's something that interests you. If not, it's fine. It talks a lot about the budget, and they brought in, you're not supposed to say profit, precisely because Temple is supposed to be a public university. It's supposed to be a nonprofit. So you're supposed to say something like revenue over expenses, or something like that. But the union is being a little risque and trying to call it profit. So they brought in money. They have, like, something like a $1.5 billion investment portfolio or something like that. This, because it's the union, it talks a lot about jobs. You can read more about the finances here. You can look at it. If you're one of these people that's really good with financial documents and stuff, this might be interesting to you. I've looked at these documents. I don't understand anything. And here's, like, an Instagram version of it. This is the bit about, how it affects students. And then if you want to support, you can sign this. I actually don't think that they're insisting on a 5% cut anymore. They've lowered it. Still supposed to be a cut though. But in any case, just wanted to share that with you because I feel like students oftentimes you don't realize how much stuff is going on at the university, and so I thought I would share that with you. Uh, I'm terrified to see how many minutes long this video is, but I'm gonna post it anyway. And if you're interested to watch it, you watch it. And if not, that's fine too. Or maybe you got bored in the middle. That's all right. That's okay. Also. All right. Well, thanks everybody, and sorry for talking so much. And I'll see you on Canvas soon.
What do you think, Buster? What do you think about the McDonaldization of society, huh? No good. Don't like it. It's too hot, right, Buster? Buster, why are you looking at the door? Come here, look. Come here. What is it? It's too hot. Come here, paw. Oh,